Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the books that I would literally sell my soul to read for the first time again. I am coming to you from sunny Ibiza. I've been here on holiday for a couple of days with my boyfriend. He has had to travel a day back early for work, so it's just me, and I thought I would jump on here and make a little video for you guys. So every so often there is just a book that comes along and you're reading it and you're just like, oh, this is one of those books. Like, this is one of those books that I know is going to get 5 stars from me straight away and that I'm going to be talking about to everybody. These are those books that I'm going to talk to you about just now. Number 1 on the list is a book that is kind of well known. It's been on Book Talk quite a lot, talked about. It's been out for a couple of years now. It is a book called On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. It kind of sits in a world between a memoir, but it's also fictional. But definitely the author takes a lot of his own life and has put it into this novel. It kind of is written as a letter, basically by a young Vietnamese man who is writing a letter to his mother to basically tell her all the things that he wasn't able to when she was alive, I think is the premise, as much as I can remember. It's basically about an immigrant Vietnamese family and their experience of living in America, and especially the experience of this young Vietnamese gay man and kind of what he goes through in life living where he lives. He kind of gets involved with a guy who, as far as I can remember, is a bit troublesome and just honestly is one of the most beautifully poetic books I've ever read in my entire life. I remember going to traveling on the tube coming home in London from work and stuff. I remember there was literally one paragraph when I stopped walking and just took a deep breath, being like, whoa, the way he explains things and his sort of experience and just the words he uses blew my mind and just made me be like, wow, I will never be able to write as good as this. So if you're into sort of lyrical, poetic type books, I hands down would tell you that you need to stop everything what you're doing and go and pick up this book. I would recommend it to literally everybody. He's since then written, I think, another book called Time is the Mother or something like that, and I think it's more of a poetry book. I think he was a poet first, hence why it explains why his writing is stunningly beautiful. But yeah, go and check him out, go and check out this book. I swear to you, you will not be disappointed. It's only 200 plus pages. It's really easy to read. You will just be obsessed with it. I would doubt it highly that you wouldn't find it amazing. The next book on the list is a book called The Book of Longings by Sue Monk Kidd. She's a really well-known author. I'm sure you'll have heard of her before. Her first ever novel that she debuted was The Secret Life of Bees, which has become a national bestseller and has been made into a film and a musical. And this is her most recent novel, which came out, I think, the year of the pandemic in 2020. And basically it follows the story of the fictional character of Jesus' wife, a woman called Anna, set in Jerusalem during the time of Jesus Christ, before we know him as the Messiah. Now, just giving you some context here, I am in no way religious or especially to do with Christianity. I have no real belief system in that. I believe definitely in something. I think I'm definitely more spiritual. So really this would not strike me as a book that I would want to read at all. I don't really care. However, because I'm a bit of a historical fiction buff, this particular book just completely sucked me in from the first page, and I was hook, line and sinker until the very end. It is a story of this woman who, women at this time have not been documented at all. The Bible itself, I think, might be quite controversial to say, but was written by men in a sort of patriarchal sort of system. The story of women and their experience does not feature a lot in the Bible. So this sort of gives a voice to the women of the time and definitely looks at these early ideas of feminism and what it means to be a woman at that time, and it just is like a beautiful, beautiful novel. Again, the language in it, the way she describes the world is like so transformative. It totally takes you to the place that it is set, and yeah, takes you right up to the moment where we know the end of Jesus Christ, of what we know the story of Jesus Christ to be. And yeah, I would honestly, even if you're not religious at all or you don't really believe in any of that sort of stuff, it's a standalone as a story is really, really interesting and gripping, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. I would love to reread it again. In fact, I've been meaning to reread it for a long time now, so I definitely maybe will get that on my TBR list to like pushed up to the top, because I really want to read it again. Highly recommend. The next book that I would literally sell my soul to read again is a book called Sugarbane by Douglas Stewart. I'm sure it's quite well known, lots of people will have heard of it. It won the Man Booker Prize, I think, a couple of years ago. It was Douglas Stewart's debut novel, and it is set in Glasgow, my hometown where I am from in Scotland, and centres around the Bain family, to do with an alcoholic mother, and specifically her son Shuggy, who is described as queer, and basically about their relationship together throughout the years. I genuinely think it's a flawless book. I don't know if maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm from Glasgow, but I genuinely fell in love with it from the moment I started reading it. It is heartbreaking, it's raw, it's full of truth, it's full of humour. It's a really quite universal story. I think a lot of people can relate to it in some way. And yeah, if you want to like get a picture of working class Glasgow and to be sort of immersed in a world in Scotland, this is a book that you need to stop everything you're doing again and go and find, because it is brilliant. If you especially want to listen to it read by a Scottish person, I would highly recommend listening to the audiobook as well, because it's brilliantly read. I'm not sure who it's read by, but yeah, I hands down think it's one of my favourite novels of all time. He's since then written another novel called Young Mungo, which is also equally as popular. I don't find it as good as Sugarbane, but yeah, check out his work, you will absolutely not be disappointed. Okay, so this is a bit of a rogue one. It's not actually a novel, it is a play. It's a really, really, really well-known play. I'm sure, like, if you haven't heard of it, I would be surprised, but it is The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I first read this when I was in high school. We did it in our 5th year sort of drama class for our exams, and I genuinely became obsessed with it. Obviously, Arthur Miller is a really well-known modern classic playwright. He's written other things, Death of a Salesman and All My Sons. The Crucible specifically centres around the witch trials of I'm not going to remember the date now. It's like 1640s or 1650s America, set in Salem, Massachusetts, where this sort of crazy sort of witch hunt took place, where the pilgrims of the new America started basically trialing these women and men, and ended up executing them all. The story is so gripping and so interesting, and it's actually based on real life events that happened at the time, and it is just, again, like historical fiction, you know, America set in that sort of time in the New World. I am just instantly obsessed with. I think that's probably actually where my obsession began, probably. It is a fantastic play. It's so easy to read. It's 4 acts, but it's very short. And yeah, there's also a movie with Winona Ryder, and I forget the actor's name, but he's also just incredible. And I think the play is actually coming to London this June, if you want to go check it out and see it. Yeah, I wish I could read it again or see it again for the first time. Every time I come back to it, I'm just like drawn to it from the first page, and I think you would be too. Okay, the next one on the list is a book called The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr., another debut novel by the author. This book was, again, like instantly a 5-star book from the moment I read it. It is set in the Deep South during the antebellum slave era, and is basically the story of forbidden love between these two young enslaved men, the solace they find with each other, and then a betrayal that threatens their sort of very existence. Genuinely another incredibly written, visceral novel that I would recommend to absolutely anybody. I've said this before perhaps, but give me any sort of story that is set in a time where the voices of people were never documented, to do with the fact that, you know, being gay at that time, it was just like not a thing, not okay. Give me a story about that existing in a time that you wouldn't expect it to, and I am instantly 100% there with you, want to hear about it. Because I think that's so interesting. Like, even the story of the Book of Longings by Sue Monk Kidd, like, to give the voice of a woman in that period is just like, you just don't hear of that at all. Like, so to be able to give a voice to that is just amazing. And the same with this sort of story. Like, I'd never ever heard once of imagining of like, yeah, I'm sure there were men finding solace in other men and falling in love with each other. And so yeah, I love books like this. I've said this before, but I'm writing a novel as well about set in a time that you just have not heard of a lot of stories or voices to do with two gay men at that specific time. And yeah, if you love to read novels like that or want to hear more of them or see more of them, this is one that you are gonna like love. Following on from that is another really well-known book just now that has blew up over book talk over the past couple of years. It is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I'm sure you don't really need to explain that much about what the story is, because I'm sure you've heard of it before, but in case you haven't, it basically is the story of Achilles and Patroclus. I can never ever say his name, Patroclus, and how they basically fall in love with each other, and their time set through the Greek history. And I think is it based on, it's either based on the Iliad or Homer's Odyssey. I can't remember exactly what one, I think, but I could be wrong. And basically the story of their love and what happens to them. And I actually tried to read the book first a couple of years ago, and I would say, like, to the start it's kind of like a little bit difficult to get into, or at least that's how I found it. But genuinely, by a certain point, I was like flipping through the pages, and I think I read the end of the book on a bus one day when I was coming home from work in London, and I just was like sobbing on the bus because it was one of the most beautiful, like, final few pages of a book that I've ever read. The redemption that happens in it, and it just, you get to a certain point in the novel and you realise what's happening, or the voice of the story of what's happening with that. And it is just, yeah, it's perfect, brilliant book. I'm really excited to see what she's going to bring out next. I'm sure she is writing something, but I can't remember what it is about. But check out Madeline Miller. She also has written Circe, I think, is the other book that she's really well known for. I haven't read that. It's definitely on my list. But yeah, start with Song of Achilles, because you will not be disappointed. I feel like I've said that a gazillion times with the books that I've said. You might be disappointed, but these are just my opinions, I guess. Okay, another book that I became absolutely obsessed with it this year is a book called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. It is a story of Nike's CEO, and basically the story of how Nike has become the global brand that it has been. I listened to it on audiobook and genuinely finished it within 2 days. I think because I'm in this sort of space right now and I'm very interested in the idea of business and of companies and their stories. And this one, like, is hugely well known. It instantly became a bestseller when it came out, and it's just so interesting. It's told in a really amazing way. It like flows. It's not like a boring sort of business book or anything like that. It's genuinely just about how this young guy started, basically from nothing, from one tiny small idea, and how it grew into the absolute insane business that it is today. If you're looking for inspiration, even if you're not interested in business, if you're interested in like whatever your passion is, if you're a writer or an actor or whatever, like, I think this book will speak to you in some sort of way. because it's basically about like taking chances and not giving up no matter how many hurdles that keep coming your way. So yeah, go and read it. It will not take you long at all. And the final book that is on my list that I would genuinely sell my soul to read again for the first time is The Mountains Sing by Nguyen Phan Ke Mai. This is a book that I read during lockdown and did not expect to like fall in love with it as much as what I did. It is set in Vietnam and is a story between a grandmother and her grandchild, and kind of flits between the two eras of basically her childhood growing up, the grandmother's childhood growing up, and the grandchild now living through the Vietnamese War. I can't fully even remember that much more about what it was about, but I just remember like every single page of it. I was not bored. There was no slow point. There was no dip in it. I just was enamored by the whole thing. I have said this before. I went traveling a couple of years ago now. I just want to go back so badly to Vietnam, one of the places we went to, and I think because I went there and because I really like was immersed in the culture and sort of the history of the Vietnamese War, going to the museums and all that sort of stuff, I really found this novel so engrossing. Is that the right word? I was engrossed in it, yeah. Phenomenal writing. She's got another book out just now, which is on my TBR list this month, which I'm just about to get around to, called Dust Child. But yeah, if you're again interested in any sort of historical fiction, maybe you want a little break away from your normal average sort of historical fiction to do with, I don't know, the World Wars or something, then try this one, because I don't want to say you'll not be disappointed again, but I don't think you'll be disappointed. Yeah. Those are the seven novels. Those are the novels that I would literally sell my soul to read again for the first time. I love when you pick up a novel and you start to read it and you're like, oh, this is going to be one of those books. I'm sure you have them too. Comment below. Tell me the books that you would literally sell your soul to read again for the first time, and I will check them out. If you haven't done so already, please give this video a like and hit the subscribe button. I am so glad that you're here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon.